Good afternoon. I'm going to take that natural break in conversation to go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us here today. My name is Heather Harris, and I am the Curator of Education here at the Art Museum of West Virginia University. And I'm very happy to have you here for today's Lunchtime Looks. As many of you know, we host these programs usually monthly. We try for the first Friday of the month, although sometimes with holiday weekends and things that shift, so please be sure to follow our Facebook and our social media for more information about upcoming events. But today's event is a very special one because we are introducing you to the new director of the Art Museum of West Virginia University, Mr. Aaron Levi Garvey. So Aaron comes to us most directly from the Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh, where he was the chief curator. Prior to that, he does have experience at academic art museums at Auburn, where he worked at the Jule Smith Museum of Fine Art, and also has founded several important and exciting arts organizations and independent curatorial projects. So we're really happy to have him here and hear a little bit more about his vision for us here in Morgantown and what we hope we can see for this place in the future. All right, so without further ado, I'll give you Aaron.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming on a lunch break. This is my first Lunchtime Looks, so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to see everyone, some familiar faces, some new faces, and all the like. So I guess I'll just jump right into it.
That would be great.
Yeah. You know, most of my career and most of the things that I'm interested in are working in areas and sectors and institutions that have fertile territory. Thinking about areas of need from a standpoint of accessibility through museums. I had the immense honor of going to museums as a child. I was raised by my great-grandparents, and they just kind of took me everywhere. At first, it was a mechanism to keep me occupied, and then I started dragging them into museums, and went from like the Baseball Hall of Fame to the Eastman House to National Portrait Gallery, Smithsonian, Brooklyn Museum, etc. It kind of just ballooned, and then I started dragging them everywhere. So being in museums has always been a comfort place for me. However, it has not always been a comfort place for everyone else, most everyone I've ever met, if I'm being completely honest. Museums are always seen as very austere, unapproachable. The arts in and of themselves are seen as austere and inapproachable, elite in most cases. I take significant umbrage with the fact that the art world is typically only ever heard about when auction records are made. You know, when Da Vinci's sell for $480 million, that further builds a ravine between artists, philanthropy, access, understanding of the arts, understanding of museums as a whole, and who this work that we do is for. And that separation really shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be like the haves and have-nots, or access or inaccessible, etc. So I've always thought about, and as Heather had mentioned, in creating different organizations throughout my career. I've had the privilege of founding a number of different nonprofits and commercial entities that support artists first and foremost, and bring artists into communities and say, here's everything this community has. You're here, they're welcoming you here. How do we make that community kind of spiderweb out and look like a Law and Order crime scene map with like the red thread from all these different angles, and like how many people can access different points of view, different experiences, whether it's a fabrication method or it's an exhibition method. Yeah, all those different modes. And that also, I'm inspired with this work based on my own experiences in education, public school, all the way through elementary school to graduate school. We're all public and state spaces. And there was always a desire to see more and have more access, right? We were always learning about deceased artists. We were rarely interacting with artists that were living in our time, and I think that that's very important. That's why I've always made a commitment throughout my career to work with living artists and look at history through a contemporary lens. That is a very long-winded way of introducing myself, but also saying what I see for the future here at the Art Museum of WVU. The work that Bob and Heather and Karen and Liza and Sam have done, and my predecessor Todd, here to really plant the flag as a museum that's leading contemporary thought in the region and being a leading contemporary museum in the state. As I've done a very cursory review of museums in the state, this is the only contemporary museum in the state of West Virginia, and I think there's a lot of pride in that. I think that there's a lot of fertile ground, and there's a lot of work that can be done with future art administrators, future master artists that WVU is teaching, educating, and guiding and shepherding through their early careers. If the museum can be that asset and be a hub of activity in the region, in West Virginia as a whole, I think the sky is the limit.
So, unlike a lot of our lunchtime looks, we're going to have this be more conversational so we can ask questions of Aaron. He asked me to ask a few questions first to get the ball rolling. So we'll do a little bit of a dialogue back and forth, and then we'll give you all the opportunity to share your thoughts, your questions with him as well. So thank you for that introduction, Aaron. One of the things I highlighted in my introduction of you was that you have worked at a campus art museum before at Auburn. And as we stand in this exhibition that is actually part of one of our exciting projects called our Faculty Fellowship Program, where we provide summer research funding to faculty from across the university to co-curate with our museum staff exhibitions related to their areas of expertise. So this exhibition was co-curated with Dr. Eric Herron of the Poli-Sci department, whose expertise is in elections internationally. He travels all over the world as a consultant for elections. And so he came to us last summer with a proposal that said, you know, we're heading into a national election cycle in 2024, and how can we use art as a catalyst for civic dialogue around those issues? So that's a long preamble, but I guess my question to you is, how do you hope to or envision growing collaboration across the university community and in interdisciplinary fields?
Sure. I would love to get as many, I mean, this is like the perfect example in my mind of interdisciplinary collaboration. If we can have departments, medicine, law, business, accounting, I mean, get very granular with it and get as broad with it. And we have all of these departments as collaborators, as colleagues, and we bring them to the museum and we say, look, we have 5,000 objects in this collection. How can we interpret this collection through your respective expertise and fields? It might not be what we think it is. Art and medicine, art and healing, right? Being able to look at, I'm like looking at this Shepherd Ferry, and I find it quite a relaxing piece. You know, it's a wave, it's the ocean, so I'm thinking like, I reflect on times at the beach myself. It's not a relaxing piece, but that's just simply me. But then I start going a little bit deeper, and I'm thinking about environmentalism, and then, okay, so we can go over to, forgive me for not knowing all of the departments, but like the forestry department, and like thinking about environmental studies as a whole, and saying like, okay, well, we have a number of pieces in our collection from historic to contemporary that look at environmentalism, that look at the natural landscape, look at nature. How can we use those as teaching tools from a conceptual standpoint with these artists, what they were looking at during their time? Is it simply representative, or is it conceptual in nature? How do we tie those together, and then how do we talk within health systems? How do we talk within environmentalism? Political activism, political awareness.
And how do you see students entering into that as well? That was, what is the role for students in a campus art museum, and how would you hope to involve not only faculty, but students as well?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to live forever. I'm not going to work in a museum for 280 years, right? So these are our future administrators. These are the future artists that will be exhibiting in museums. This is a professional practices exercise for these future leaders and artists. They need to see the standard, what it's like to mount an exhibition, what it is like to see work in a museum. Again, museums are not comfort places for a lot of people. So if we can get students into, maybe this is the first ever museum they've ever set foot in, away from a historic site or a national park or something along those lines. If this is the first ever museum they've set foot in, we need to show them that the bar, like what they need to aspire to as a future artist, as a future art historian, administrator, so on and so forth. So we need to be that hub of saying, here's the standard, here's how it's executed, here's what your work could eventually look like in a museum. Yeah, I think a place of inspiration, I guess, would be, and practical application would be the two things that I would say the museum can be. Or is, not can be,
and
is.
You also have extensive experience, as you said, with contemporary artists and highlighting their work. And I know we've already had conversations about some ambitious goals you have for growing our collection and collaborating with some artists. Could you tell us a little bit about some of those collection growth goals, some of the relationships you hope to help bring here to West Virginia?
Sure. Speaking of artists in proximity and living artists, I've been made aware that one of the artists in the exhibition is here today. So when you have the chance to meet an artist, Nancy Abrams is in-house. If you have the chance to meet an artist while they are alive and while they are working and you can talk to them, that is very, 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 very important. It's not something that has been well documented throughout history. A lot of artists' notebooks are what we're going after. We're in a time period where they can capture video and audio, but if you can have that one-on-one interaction with an artist in their lifetime, take advantage of that at every point that you can. So with that in mind, it's always my thought to bring artists into a region or into a museum or into an area of support. It's not always financial support for artists. It's what is a dream project? What have they never had access to? We have a significant print program here and a print studio here, which is on par with Tandem Press, Tamarind, Rutgers, Graphic Studio, and these are all four of those presses are university affiliates. We have it here too, and we're in Appalachia. The closest one to us would be Rutgers in New Jersey or Tandem in Wisconsin. We can be that connective tissue and start a network with these other presses and start publishing work for artists who have maybe never worked with a master printer before. They have an idea to work in print media. Maybe they're only working with their home printer or were only able to print when they were in college, something along those lines. So as we start publishing works, we retain one for the collection, which is a storytelling collecting mechanism, and then we disseminate them out to collectors in the region, supporters in the region, benefactors, etc. And then we start a sharing component where we can share those editions out to other museums around the region as well, saying, this is work that was created in West Virginia. This is important to the story and history of West Virginia that ABC artists created this in West Virginia. Now we're disseminating out to other museums. So that's one mechanism, looking at artists' estates and understanding, again, while they're alive, collecting their story, understanding the concepts behind their work, their practice, what made them tick. That's very important also.
So I think one of the things to maybe address the elephant in the room that has been front of mind for all of us who've lived through the last year at WVU is growth, and sometimes financial growth, but also how we can be a sustainable and robust institution. And
Sure.
I think I would wonder what are some of your experiences with that, and what is some of your hope for how you can continue to help us support this kind of programming and beyond.
Yeah. Wow. You're asking me for the...
Just throw in the hardballs.
Well, the secret herbs and spices already. The things that I think about, the more students that we have in the building, I'll just tell my grand plans. It's not a secret. I'll kind of get tired of hearing me say these things. I would love for the museum to be, in some respect, degree granting. So having this museum professions degree that WVU already offers, how can we integrate that into our daily work? And we're having these undergraduate and graduate students having real-time critical work being done at the museum, but also practical application. So they know exactly what they're stepping into when they go on to be those future museum leaders. That, by way, makes the museum a tuition-generating institution, but also touring in-house exhibitions. This exhibition is incredible. It is a top-of-mind subject. Democracy is a top-of-mind subject for a lot of people. It is timely. I feel like we're in the ever-present election cycle. I feel like whether it's a local cycle, national cycle, international cycle, this exhibition has legs. We can only show so much of our collection at any given time for space constraints. We also cannot deassess much of a collection for monetary gain. So how can we leverage our collection and have monetary gains for the museum? And that's through touring exhibitions. So one of the goals is to tour this exhibition nationally, hopefully internationally. I think that would be fantastic. But also looking to other portions of our collection that we can do very similar things, but in-house curated exhibitions can be a revenue driver and can also sustain positions. They can also sustain exhibition budgets. When you build it on the front end, you only show it one time in your museum. But if we can show it to 5, 10, 20 other museums, and then we get a residual income from that later down the line, that's a sustainer. So, but also, grant writing, philanthropic work, corporate sponsorship. I would love to get Nike in the building and deck out all of us in Nike swag, right? I'll say that until it's a Nike school. The museum should be a Nike museum, I'll take off the Adidas and I'll throw on Nikes. But if we could have Nike swag that says Art Museum, no one's gonna toss that shirt, and they're gonna wear that forever, and then they're an ambassador of the museum. I'd love to see an Art Museum of West Virginia, of WVU sweatshirt and t-shirt in every dorm room on the start of every semester, or every desk for every student that attends. I think that, that's just integrated into the fabric of what we are, is if we can be that connective tissue between athletics, museum, and medicine, right? How do you tie those three together? When an athlete is healing a torn ACL, they can come to the museum and roll around and look at some beautiful pictures and have some art therapy, right? We can do all of that. We don't have to be only an austere castle on the hill, ivory tower. It's not that.
Thank you. Well, just to plug a little bit about what Aaron was talking about, for those of you who don't know, the museum opened its first ever touring exhibition at the end of last month, almost, I think, a month to the day from today, Blanche Lizelle becoming an American modernist. And it is touring around. It's on a 2-year tour schedule, and is the first time that we've really had that opportunity. And I think Aaron's vision is to continue to grow and build that. But I did want to highlight that for you all, and also highlight the hard work of my colleagues, Robert Bridges, who curated, Karen Lovar, who takes care of. Not that Bob doesn't deserve applause, but Karen is also like the engine behind and often the unsung hero. She takes care of our loans, all of the documenting of the collection. So when we send it out on the road, we make sure it's safe and being taken care of. And that's really detail-oriented work, really difficult work. And I just wanted, can we applaud for Karen too? Thanks. And Sam Boehm is also making sure that things are being handled in the proper way and taking so that's been a huge project of ours for the past couple years, and it's really exciting to watch Aaron come in with this energy for growing that program, both for spreading the beautiful resources that we have here and for the potential financial benefit, as he said. So I think that I have thrown him enough questions, and I'm going to turn the hardball throwing over to you all. Because we are recording for YouTube, I'm going to bring you the microphone, and we ask that you speak into the microphone so that the people who watch after the fact can hear your question, and we'll continue from there. So does anyone have anything they, okay, Carol, right off the bat.
Make sure to like and subscribe too. Like and subscribe.
I'm just curious what, if anything, you have planned in collaboration with the local art organizations for, I don't know, working on projects together or promoting one another or anything like that.
At the very least, I want to meet everyone first. I'm in my, I think, 46th day on the job, so very fresh. I would love to meet everyone and understand what possibilities there are for collaborating in the region and understanding what artisans are here, and how we can, I always think about import-export, right? And like showing at our museum, I don't think should be the goal for artists in our region. I think the goal should be that we find ways to take artists from this region and send them elsewhere. That is any city, any region, anywhere I've ever been, done work, whatever communities I've been with, I'm like, let's aspire to get you elsewhere. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be my first MO, because I understand that it is difficult to make it in a certain region. Sometimes museums within your region are saying like, okay, we are only showing national, international, we respect that, but like, how can we use our contacts, how can we use our connections and say, we have these assets in this region, they need support, let's send you out into the world. So yeah, import-export is kind of like, if we import the national, international, and then we export Appalachia to the international, national, I think that's more or less the route that I'm looking at.
You talked about museums being seen as elitist, and that you wanted to make it more comfortable for people to be here. Do you have any specific ways to do that?
Conversations like this, being approachable, having programs that are not just for one subset of people, having programs that are not just for highly educated, affluent art people, that it should, anybody should walk through that door and say, I'm here, I'm curious, can you show me around? And the answer should be yes. So whatever that means. I mean, last night there was a student night. There was like, 80 kids, students, not just kids.
Close to 100, I think.
Yeah,
we were close to
100 students, eating pizza, listening to music, working on bags and decorating their bags with their own aesthetic choices, coming through the museum, having conversation, topical discourse. And the conversations and discourse were not just about art. So if we can be a center where people feel comfortable to just have conversations, again, like that's what I see this exhibition as, is a conversation starter. Yeah, I want the museum to like be the yeast for the bread kind of thing. Like it's the starter, and then you make the dough, and then you bake it, and then something else amazing comes out. So. Yeah.
All right, I've got 3 people signaling me yes.
We can also make this like really informal. We can just like sit and have a conversation. It doesn't have to be mic'd and all of that too. So
this is really fun. I'm a Pittsburgh artist from Morgantown.
Cool.
Sorry, just for the
Oh, sorry. Perfect. Yeah. And it's really cool because I don't know if Heather right? Okay. We went to high school together, went to high school with Lauren. And this is embarrassing the first time I've been in the museum. I know, it's bad. But I'm curious about this sort of blue colorism going from Pittsburgh to Morgantown, right? And Pittsburgh is like, we are sort of proud of our like blue colorism, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, and I know you've only been here for 46 days.
Something like that. Yeah, it's
But
close. Yeah.
give us a tour of like the Venn diagram of cultural overlap, but then also like differences between like the culture in Pittsburgh. Obviously, it's a bigger city. Morgantown's smaller, but I'm interested in that sort of your take on sort of both worlds.
I think that, I mean, so it's a tough question and it's loaded and there's a lot to it. You know, Pittsburgh, I think, punches below its weight a little bit on the national stage. You know, it's a second-tier city with like great quality of life and great institutions, and we're only like 55 minutes south, and I think that we can punch at the same weight that Pittsburgh is right now, if not higher. And so if we can have a symbiotic relationship between what's happening in Pittsburgh, what's happening here, and then we find, I mean, part of the Cincinnati cohort also, I think there's a number of cities in this region, and by proxy like third-tier cities, that are doing work that's not being recognized because it's not a global capital. So Pittsburgh, I think, for all intent and purpose, same with Cincinnati, Columbus even, Richmond, you know, these are all cities that are considered like second and third tier cities, but they're only second and third tier cities to global capitals: New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Toronto, Miami, London, etc. I think the caliber of work is happening. You know, the high caliber of work is happening. It's just a matter of getting eyes on those places. And I think now more than ever, at least in the museum field for the last 10, 15, 20 years, more eyes are going to second and third tier cities to say, what is happening in this region? How have they been overlooked for so long? Because a lot of the artists, to your point, from Pittsburgh, went to WVU, like you've moved around a lot. I know very few native New Yorkers, right? Like I grew up, born and raised in New York. Everyone that I know that lives in New York now are not born and raised New Yorkers, or very, very finite sum of colleagues and friends are not from New York, but they are transplants. So what's the story that was told, or what informed who they are, the work that they make? They're in New York as a means to an end, or they're in London or Chicago, California, Los Angeles, whatever. What's the dotted line that kind of followed them to that point? And what often brings them back other than family? The storytelling that's happening, the conceptual fabric of the work that's being made, things like that.
Excellent.
That might be a little bit abstract.
And I know we have a couple other questions. I did want to highlight just another project, just so you all know some of the things that are going on. Aaron mentioned in passing the cohort, and we are actually working with the Cincinnati Art Museum through a program sponsored by the Art Bridges Foundation. And in this cohort program, they take a larger museum with a larger collection, usually in a bigger city, so in this case, the Cincinnati Art Museum, and partners them with smaller museums, often in the region. So we are working with, the Cincinnati Art Museum is kind of the parent organization, along with the Kennedy Museum of Art at Ohio University, the University of Kentucky Art Museum, the Denison University Art Museum, the Southeast Ohio Art Museum, and we have been working for the past year and a half on loans. So in January, we're going to be having objects coming here from the amazing collection at Cincinnati, and then about another year or two down the pike, we will have an exhibition that has objects from all of our collections that will be touring around to all of our exhibitions. So that's a long-term collaborative effort that we're working on that I think really speaks to some of the things that Aaron was saying about kind of Cincinnati as this kind of anchor city, but then also these places that have robust cultures. You know, as Carol is talking about, we have amazing artists here in Morgantown. We have the potential to really be a cultural hub and center, and through efforts like this, we're able to kind of expand that network. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about that project so you knew that was going on behind the scenes, and you'll get to see some of the fruits of that in January and then a little bit more later down the road.
And that further underscores too, like with touring exhibitions and touring collection objects, that gets our name out into the world, right? We're not only the reciprocal or the recipient of objects on loan, but we're sending pieces out on loan. Art Museum of WVU starts getting stamped in a lot of different places, whether it is Cincinnati or Los Angeles or Bridgehampton, New York, or Savannah, or wherever it is. Our name is there. The people who make this museum possible's names are there. You know, this exhibition was made possible by Ms. Gloria Plevin. That will then travel. As this exhibition goes out into the world, her name will then, and her support of this museum and this exhibition will then travel onward too. So, along with the people who've made these acquisitions possible. So, all of that travels. Again, that dotted line story.
First.
A fight's broken out. Oh no. Fight in the audience.
My thought is, now that we're expanding and we're getting our name out in the world, I'm wondering if we have any thoughts down the road of having an article in a place like Art News, or expanding so that we're, you know, even more visible in the art world. I go to Barnes & Noble, I open up Art News, I see, you know, all of these wonderful shows that are on, and then I cry because I want us to be in there too.
Yeah.
So that's my question. Do we have any thought of publishing what we're doing here?
Absolutely. I think, you know, one of the tasks or missions that I would want to talk to our staff about, and I haven't talked to you guys yet, but whatever, let's run with it. But again, that import-export, right? So if our staff can be exported out and do other things, publish themselves, go give lectures, take on opportunities as asked, like as this exhibition tours, Bob goes with it, Heather goes with it, Eric goes with it. And then, you know, as that gets legs and momentum, publications kind of come on board. Like one begets the other, and it kind of starts a larger domino effect. So national, international press would inevitably come with that.
Thank you, dear.
As far as like a media strategy.
Okay, this is a follow-up to one of Dr. Harris's questions, and I don't mean this to be a kind of a detour off such a positive discussion this morning, but I'd like to know your assessment of the current climate for university art museums, given the fact that so many major universities are facing budget cuts, as is the case here, and given what seemed to be just a snap of the fingers realization that the Art Museum at Valparaiso was lost very, very quickly. So I think you have a lot of really very exciting ideas in terms of connecting us and expanding where we are moving here. But at the same time, there's an overall climate for university art museums that, to be honest, I find a bit precarious in places. So could you maybe give an assessment of this, please?
I think that goes straight towards advocacy. Most museums, university museums specifically, have to be advocated for on an absolutely daily, if not hourly basis. The advocacy is not just me, it's not just the staff, it's you all, it's the patrons, it's the people who help make it possible to say why it's important, bend the ear of everyone you know. Make sure that we have almost 100 students in the building, not just once a month or once a semester, once a week. It's things like that, like advocating and talking to everyone we possibly can and saying like, this is why this is important. On the national scale, looking at university museums where I have colleagues and friends and things, and understanding they're doing a lot of the same thing. It's like just beating the same drum, being a lumberjack and hitting the same spot, like art museum, art museum, art museum, art museum. And then people are like, God, I'm tired of hearing what is so important about the art museum. You're like, come over and I'll show you. And then when you show them, they're like, oh, we get it. Okay, that makes sense now. So the arts, unfortunately, are always the first to be cut and the last to be reinstated. It's like tale as old as time, except like maybe when the Medicis were around and, you know, just buying their way to heaven, right? I don't know, it doesn't have to be precarious if we're advocating in the right manner. Yeah.
And I would also add to that, just also backing that up with kind of data and showing this efficacy. That's something that's been a real focus of mine for the past couple years, is we've been doing all this amazing stuff, but how are we counting that? How are we matching what audiences we're reaching, what audiences we're not? That's one of my goals in my outreach, but I think similarly, you know, when we have 100 students here on student night, understanding what majors are they coming from? How did they hear about the event? Where do they draw? So I think, and that's another place that we can do interdisciplinary collaboration across the university, right?
Nike
because
sweatshirts in dorm rooms.
I'm
telling you.
And Nike
it'll
sweatshirts
work.
in
It'll
dorm
work.
rooms. We are working, again, I'm just kind of previewing our semester for you, but one exciting thing, and I'll let you talk in just a second, Susan. One other exciting thing that's happening in collaboration with this exhibition, Our Votes, Our Values, is that we've been working with the county commissioner, the dean of extension, the dean of the creative arts and media, and the Museum Education Center is going to be an early voting site. So you can come to the Grand Hall from on October 23rd to November 2nd and cast your ballot here. And there are very few campus opportunities to do that. Sometimes the Erickson Alumni Center is one of the early voting centers, but it isn't always. And so also understanding that we have a population of 18 to 24-year-olds for whom this might be their first national election cycle. We're obviously not allowed to have any partisan materials anywhere nearby, but we are allowed to, outside of that Grand Hall voting station, say, you've cast your ballot, now come in here and talk about the issues. Or come in here and talk about the issues, think about some things, and then go cast your ballot. So that's one of our big initiatives for this fall. And I think the reason it came to my head when he said Nike again is not a Nike shirt, but we are working with marketing and branding to get shirts that say let's go, like the Mountaineers let's go, and have them say let's go vote. And being able to have that as a kind of marketing thing for the museum, and also to get students engaged in civic activity here.
And on top of that, bring in SGA, the Student Government Association, in as volunteers, having them do shifts, like, you know.
Yeah, we just met with the student government president this year. Aaron and I met with the Student Government Association president, with Susan, and he's a young man who's really excited about the arts and collaborating with us, so we're going to be working on that. Okay, and now I'm going to let Susan
I just want to put a personal face on Aaron for everybody, because you mentioned that your wife is going to be coming probably for the opening.
On Friday.
And I wanted everybody to know that so that we can all make sure she's really happy here. And also,
My daughter will be here too, so.
Tell everybody about your daughter and how she's doing.
Frances is my daughter, Frances Elaine, and she's 6 and in first grade, and she'll be here next Friday also. So when you see, like, she's probably about that tall, like little blonde kid running around, right? I don't know. Time, space don't exist to me. But yeah, when you see a little 6-year-old running around, that one's mine.
And I would want to say from a staff perspective too, that's one of the things that's been really great. We actually have a lot of staff members who have young families, and Aaron has made an intentional, like, managerial effort to support us and what we need to do to put that first, while also getting our job done and reaching these ambitious goals. So that's just a check in my book as a staff member, but I know a lot of us do, so I wanted to share that with you all. There was another one back here, and then we'll come back to Carol.
Hello, everyone. Okay, So you spoke at the beginning about how you were basically raised in museums and going to museums, and you just talked about your lovely daughter, Frances, and
She lives in museums too.
yeah, like how do you anticipate or plan on making the outreach available to the K through 12 community? I'm trying not to direct this at Dr. Harris because I know she's a busy, busy bee, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on it.
It starts with parents, probably. You know, I know anything that I get hit with from my kid's school or a peripheral interest or another parent mentions, I'm like, all right, well, I guess we're going to do that. So, yeah, it starts with the parents and then kind of, I don't want to use this phrase, but like it's like a trickle-down effect, essentially. No political connotation there. But yeah, starting with the parents and seeing what their interests are, and you know, even a lot of students of WVU have younger siblings. They're within the region also, so speaking to their interests, when they say, oh, hey, like something cool happened, we had pizza and bags and conversation and music last night. They call their friends, they then tell their parents that they did this, then their younger siblings want to enroll. It kind of is cyclical. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a nebulous response, but I think it starts, yeah, with the parents. Well, they're Nike onesies. They're like this big, or however big a toddler is, right? Like, yeah. Nike diapers.
All right.
If we
So
patent
we've got
the Nike diaper.
Carolyn.
Just one quick question. I was just wondering about how much cross-marketing you might do, for example, to have opening during or before a University Art Series event, which might get a lot of people in the doors. If you say, hey, we're going to be open from 6 to 7:30 or whatever, or on the way to basketball games, you know, on certain days when there's time, or football games, that you might get some people and want to stop by here.
That's on my radar. That is
Okay.
absolutely, like, I want a tailgate space, like in Area 51 or Lot 51 or whatever, the landing zone, or like right across the street, and say, come on in for like free hot dogs and coffee or whatever, to kind of like give you a base before you go into the. I'm sorry? Okay, yeah, like, you know, like,
All
if
right,
we can
Carol-
beat Costco at like $1 or something, right? Like,
Thanks, Aaron, for all of your information. As a retired art teacher, I kind of see this exhibit, if it could be digitized, like do like a YouTube thing and send it out to the to high school art teachers all across the state.
Yeah.
Then they could click on a link, and then they could see this, and maybe even have something interactive with students, so they can be. Like, they can go to a higher level and talk about social justice and so on.
That's right. We do have a 3D capture of every exhibition that we do. So the thought with that is once that happens, we can disseminate that out pretty widely.
That was a grant we got during the pandemic to get that 3D capture technology, and there's an archive of those that live on our website. But we also I have a teacher from Mountaineer Middle School who has made our 2020 exhibition part of her curriculum, so she just wants the old link. She emailed me yesterday and was like, can I have that, because she teaches those particular artworks and issues, so I email her the link all the time. So that's something that we do, and I think what you're speaking toward is more of a robust kind of advertising of that opportunity and maybe augmenting it. One of the things that's happened with that platform and that technology over the past 4 years, it was originally for real estate. So like if you were living in California and got a job and had to move really quick and wanted to look at a house, that's why they did it. And then quickly in 2020, they pivoted because cultural institutions had this need. But it was still really clunky. You couldn't add very much text, and you couldn't, have any rich text, italics or PDFs or anything like that. And over the past 4 years, I think they've realized that places like us are using it, and it's gotten much better. We can upload, like the PDFs of all of these things will be in there, but you can also make individualized links with questions, with recordings from someone like me or someone like Aaron that could be part of a curriculum, and I think that's a good idea.
Just to follow up, so could that information go to the State Board of Education and then they could make it available to all of the teachers?
Sure, yeah. Okay, Linda.
Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, thanks.
I am a fellow native New Yorker.
Yay! When we all live elsewhere.
What about, what are your thoughts about docents?
It's the second question in the last like 2 hours that I've heard that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, not now. I was going to ask that too. So.
All right, third. Again, I'm 46 days in, so I'm trying to make an assessment from like greatest need at this moment right now. In my eyes, like greatest need is some staffing for the museum as a whole, and that's from the back end staffing. So we need help with our exhibitions department, we need help with our curatorial department. Administrative associate position became vacant on my third week, so I'm looking from the greatest need at this point. So I'll address the docent core hopefully relatively soon.
So I would encourage you maybe to think broadly in terms of what the role of a docent might actually be.
Sure.
It might not necessarily have to be the traditional educator type role. There might be other ways that they can help bring the dough in as well.
Okay, I like that. We have committee work. We can bring in some committees too.
Excellent, thank you. Well, so I think we've done a lot of kind of formal peppering of Aaron with questions. So we're going to wrap up this portion, but we're going to be in the galleries. The museum is officially open. Today is the first day we're open to the public. So people can stay here if they like. Our opening reception is a week from today. It's on Friday. A couple of notes, those of you who are friends of the Art Museum, you should have gotten an email today from Aaron reminding you that we have a preview at 4 p.m. and a walkthrough with Bob on that day. We apologize for the tardiness of that. As we said, we're down an administrative associate. And so we're kind of backfilling, but we would love to see you at 4. If you're not a friend of the Art Museum, click and join so that you can come and get that free perk. And then from 5 to 7, we'll have light hors d'oeuvres for the general public and an opportunity to truly celebrate this good work that we've all done together. And this weekend, we're kind of considering our soft opening. We wanted to have our student workers have a moment, especially with the Penn State game, to get acclimated to being in this space and looking out for our works of art before we did that celebration. So yes, we would love to see you all next Friday, 4 p.m. for a walkthrough with Bob, 5 p.m. for hors d'oeuvres and wine. Also, I wanted to highlight, in addition to the early voting, on Monday, September 16th, Nate Powell, who is a graphic artist, Dylan Collins is back here standing next to his 3 illustrations. Dylan, can you Vanna White for us? Yes, thank you. Nate Powell co-wrote the graphic novel March with the late Congressman John Lewis about the civil rights movement and John Lewis's involvement in that, and the images that we have there are the march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, which is also depicted in the Jacob Lawrence print to the right, so we've got a really nice dialogue there. Nate is going to be speaking on Monday, the 16th. That's different from normal visiting artist lectures because he had a very constrained schedule. He'll speak at 5 p.m. in Block Hall, and then we're going to have a reception and a book signing down here from 6 to 7, so we're trying to offer literal and figurative breadcrumbs or cheese or something to get people down here. But that will also be, the galleries will be open at that point. You can talk to him, ask him questions. purchase his book, get it signed. He's really powerful. March is actually a trilogy, and it's a really powerful. Upstairs, our exhibition, Mapping Climate Change with Jules Gilson, you'll see as a tremendous, large, massive installation piece. And Jules Gilson will be here the week of October 14th through 18th for a full residency with our students and our faculty. And we'll be giving her artist lecture on the Tuesday of that week, which is the 15th of October. And then we will have on the first Friday of October the next iteration of this Lunchtime Looks series with Professor Beth Shorrock, who is going to talk about that exhibition and her work in fibers and sustainable textiles and how that relates to the work upstairs. So lots of opportunities to engage. Come vote here. Let's go vote. Thank you for being here, and not with Pat McAfee, but let's go Mountaineers.
Yeah.
And let's welcome Aaron to the Mountaineer family.
This is great. This is good. Yeah. Great.